Hello, my name is Eric Swenson, and in this session we're going to be working with Figma and learning the basics of how to use it. Within this, we'll identify all the different tools that are out there in the marketplace today and identify sort of the surge of why Figma is sort of the go-to tool for all things design. We'll go over the overall team structure, some of the settings, how to set up projects and files. Within files, you'll also be able to choose templates. We'll identify the core components to Figma and the overall navigation, how to create frames and shapes, configure those shapes, and also some masking. Within Figma, you're also able to do prototyping, and there's also an inspect component which we'll identify. We'll also go through and identify some of the other features such as commenting and copying links. And then at the end, we'll go over some of the overall pros and cons of using Figma. So to start, this is just a basic page that I have in Figma. We're going to go through and look at how to create a new project and team. So here I have a general team set up, and this is just a sample team that I created. You can create a new project within a team, and that basically is a collection of different pages that you can have within a project. So here I have a project within this team called Project Name and Figma. Within the team, I have certain members. I can add certain people to here. I also have certain settings that I can configure. So within a project, you could have multiple pages. So here I have an example project that doesn't have any pages yet, or this particular one where I just have my baseline. So if I click on my project, I can see here that I have a Figma Basics file. If I double click, I then go directly into the page itself. Now within the page, it's basically a bunch of different places you could put images and content and artboards. And if you're used to Sketch, these different frames are what you would call as artboards. So here, one of the interesting aspects that, knowing that Figma is a one size, is a tool that can be used for many different situations, all the way from early prototyping all the way up to detailed designs. Here I pulled together some general stats about all the different design tools that are out in the marketplace today. So as you can see, Figma is leading the charge here. Sketch is still a great tool, but I think because you're not able to do prototyping and that a lot of the exporting and inspect components are utilizing external plugins or things like Zeppelin, Figma is really a one-stop shop when it comes to all these different features that throughout any design project you're looking for. You'll notice that it's a highly rated tool, so it's sort of a front runner there. And one of the other big aspects is can be used across both Mac and Windows. So it is a online tool. It is something that you can host all of your files online, and it is a standalone app that you can download for either Windows or Mac. So going back to my project here, this is where I can then create a new page. So up in the top right corner, you can create a new page. The other thing, if you go back to my team here, if you have a project with no pages in it, it has this new file right here. So if I click new file, it has some basic ones, so certain device types here or certain desktop examples. And then they all have all these other collaborative tools that you can use, similar to Miro, but this is a lot more robust. So I'm going to hit cancel here, go back to my other project, and from here I'm going to click new. Now here, this is just a basic page, and I'll kind of describe the top sections up here. So under Figma, you have information about Figma, all the different files, edit, view. Once you have an object, you get more features from here. And then as you go across, There is also a repeat menu of those same components here. So you have File, Edit, View. The reason for that is if you're in full screen mode, that you'll have the menus available as you need it without having to use the standard operating system menus in the top. So with that, I'm going to start with creating a basic frame. So by clicking on this, you have a frame, and you would just click and drag your frame. From here, you can set where it's located in the x-axis. So we can set to 0 and the y-axis to 0. So this is sort of your starting point. We'll just set it to 1400 and a height of 900. So this is sort of your basic starting point. You have your basic move, and then you have the ability to scale. I'll get to that in a second. Within the frame, you have slices. We won't get into that yet. And then within here, these are your shapes. So the shapes, you have rectangle, line, arrow, ellipsis, polygon, star, and then place image. These are the core things that you'll be working with to design your screens. So I'll start off with a rectangle. So here, if I just simply click and drag, I'll be able to draw a box. As a key command, I have just click on the command key and scroll up and down on my mouse, which zooms me in and out. You can also do command plus and minus to zoom in at a certain zoom length. So within the rectangles, you have the common areas where you could just resize them. You also have the ability to, on these corners, there's a little circle where you can change the radius. And then, of course, if you hover on the outside, you can rotate them here. Now, all of these things you can change within the properties on the right. But that's the basics of the rectangle. You have your general fill, so you can click on fill and you can change the color. You could do a eyedropper if there's a certain color that you want. Once you get that color, you can then drag that color into the document panel here. You also have strokes, so you can add in a stroke. Within here, you just scrub it sideways or type it in of what size you want. There is a variety of different stroke types that I'll get to more when we get into the line. You can add in some effects, and then for this particular object, you can specify export components, like exporting it as a PDF or a PNG or JPEG, etc. So that's the general part of the rectangle. The next one is the general line. So here, if you click and drag, it'll snap to specific, a direct line, or you can have it diagonal. Using the shift key does the 45-degree and right angles. So here, I just have my basic line. Within here, you have your stroke color. Again, you can just change that, change the width. And then you have a variety of other features within the line. So that's just the basic line. Now, there is a arrow, which is very similar to the line, if not identical, but it defaults to have an arrow assigned at the end. Within here, you can change the different arrow types by clicking on this ellipsis. And then within here, you'll see that it says mixed. If I just did none, there will be no arrows on either side. You can then hit round, which it basically rounds the edges of that line. From here, you could choose square. It's just squared off. And then you have line arrow, which has this basic arrows. And then you have triangle arrow. Now, one of the things that you have is, now that's specifying it for both sides. If I wanted to specify it for just one side, you can just select one of the points here. And then under the ellipsis, you can say maybe you just want it square, round, And then you would maybe select the other side, and if you want that one to be a triangle. So you have a quite a bit of flexibility here of how you want it to be configured, and that is the basics to the line. Now there's other aspects to line here which is a little bit more complicated. If you wanted a dashed line, you could go 20, 10. So that is the size of 20 with 10 spacing in between. Now if you wanted 10 and 20, now you've got it 10 width and 20 spacing in between. Or you can keep it just very even and 10 and 10, or 50, 50, and you've got sort of these dashed lines here. So you can work with that. The next component in here, and then we also have the configurations in the top. So if you wanted to change one of these points to be where you can allow it to curve or that sort of thing, you could just enable that. And then once you're done, you just simply hit done, and then you're done modifying that component. The next one is the ellipsis. Now this one's interesting. You would normally think it's just a circle, but they do have this ability to add in this arc. So if I were to click on that circle, it's a little bit hard sometimes, that you could then start to play around and have like a little Pac-Man. And what this is good for is really creating like pie charts, or and then the one in the middle here, as you start to do this, now you've got sort of like that donut chart. And so then you can start to sort of clone this. So I'm using Option Shift Drag and I'm on a Mac. And from here, you can then sort of rearrange this so that maybe you bring that over here and start to adjust it. But you just kind of play around with it, and you can do a variety of different things with that. So just with the shape, ellipsis shape, you have this ability to sort of do the different styles. The next shape here is the polygon tool. Within this polygon tool, it also has a couple of different, you have the radius, so you can make the corners. And then this is interesting where you can change the amount of points. So it could be 4, it could be 5, and you just keep going from there. So this would be a good example of if you wanted to do like a stop sign or something like that, you could just configure it that way. And then the last one is the star. So the star is very similar, where now here you have this ability to also add in the points. And it's a little tricky getting the little circles there. But from here, you can then move it in and out. And if you really wanted to have a lot, it gets to this real craziness there. So a lot of configuration here. So you have a lot of flexibility, and these are all vector. So they definitely scale to size very easily. The last one is place image. So from here, you could either copy and paste from an image that you have in your library, or just this place image. It'll ask you to just place it. So here you just click, and then you've placed the image, and then you can kind of move it around within here. So that's kind of the basics of those different objects. The next one here is your pen tool. So the pen tool just functions the way that you normally think it would, and as you drag and click and drag, you'll be able to do the cornering, and then you can just click to provide the end of that line. So at this point, one of the aspects of here that I didn't mention is really these the joining components. This is where, in the example here, you can click on the different edges, so you can round off the edges. This one and let's say this point here, this one is, I'll go back up to this. If this is really at a certain point, it just allows you to sort of round off the edges if they're really, at the extreme. So I think that's mostly it for the different objects and shapes. So the next one is really around type. So here there's the type tool in the top. I just select that, and I would just click onto the page. From here, if I zoom in, and I'm using zoom with the command and scroll, you'll be able to select it all. And then if you use command shift and the right bracket, you can increase the font size. You can also increase the font size and all the different properties over here. So if I wanted to make this larger, you have all of your different fonts. You have the different styles within the fonts, and then your size. You have, so if we add in more content, that within here, you have this auto sort of for the line height, and then you have the character spacing. There's a few other things for text here. So you have this ability to set an auto height. If I were just to change the height of this box, it's just gonna sort of crop it out and just allow you to move that. Some of the things that I like to do is just keep the auto width, which automatically keeps the constraint around the text. You can do your alignment, so center, right, and left. This is the text, so if the text box is really tall and you've modified that, you can have that center within the middle of that text box, or you can have it aligned to the bottom. Within here, there are a ton of other things that you can do around styling. I'm not going to get into all of that. But overall, you can set the cases to uppercase, to lowercase, all of your other components within here. So there's a lot of styling things that you can do, and I encourage you to explore that. The fill is for the color of the font. You then have a variety of other effects that you can apply to it, like shadows, and then that's mostly it for text. So the next component is that I'm going to talk about is masking. So within here, a lot of the times you may want to create a picture within a circle. Maybe it's like a profile picture. So what I'm going to do is I drew an ellipsis here, and I'm going to drag one of a picture of my dog, and you can see her here. Her name is Lacey. So the way that I can mask this picture into that object is I would put the picture up on top of that object. I would select both of those layers, and I would do Command G, which is to group them. Now by grouping them, and it just allows it to be controlled a little bit better. But within this group, I'll go back to my ellipsis here, and you can either right click on it and you have a bunch of menu items underneath here, and you can click on use a mask, or in the top there's this real quick key here that if I just click use a mask. So you'll notice that the picture has been cropped to that object style. I can then resize the image within here and frame in that. So a little bit more. So you'll see nice and framed. So that's where you can do a lot of your cropping within. And there's a couple other ways of doing cropping of content. You can use a frame and basically crop it that way. But this just allows you to explore those different objects, and from here you can do really interesting, fun stuff with that. So Explore, definitely look into exploring that and all the different objects and with masks. So the next component is really as you start to build out your pages. I'm going to draw a frame here. And this is, I'm just going to set this to 1400 and 900 again. So I'm going to start to design like a web page. So from here, I'm going to choose a rectangle. I'm going to make this my header, make it around 80. And then I'm going to add in just an icon, pretending it to be a logo. I'm going to set this to be a little bit darker. This one to be a little bit lighter. I'll come in here, add in my text. And set that to maybe something like that. A little bigger. So as I'm starting to draw it out, I'm just changing the styles. Another thing that you can do is I have a SVG of a search icon that I'm just going to drag onto the page here. You'll notice that I can just simply change the color and resize it. And we'll just put that there. All right. One other thing to note is if you have an object, I'll go back over here, that if you've grouped some of these objects together, and if you just use this pointer tool, the move tool, to resize it, it's gonna sort of just squish everything and just it'll not really scale as well as you think it would. So there is an actual scale tool, so that if I were to click on this and resize it, it keeps everything at a scale size, and so all of the different it really just scales it to keep the constraints of the objects without distorting them. So that's one thing to note, is the scale versus the move. So going back over here to our little website here, I'm just going to add in some text. I'll make that a little bit larger. And then we'll add in a button at the bottom. Change the radius. And so we can showcase some of the prototyping components. So here, this is just the next button. And why not? Let's just throw in that picture of the dog. Fix this. All right, so this is our starting of our page. Then one of the things that you can do is within the prototyping, if you wanted this top banner area to be fixed, you can simply just click, you'd want to group it. And then from here, click Fix Position when scrolling. So now if we were to go and let's create another page here. I'm just using the Option Shift and drag. So this will delete this, page 2. And then we can have a back button over here. All right, so this is kind of the general sense of our pages. So from here, there's a couple of different tabs. You have your prototyping tab and then your inspect tool pane. So within the prototyping, this is where you start to link one page to another. So from here, I'll just click on this and then I drag and then snap it to the next page. So you'll notice in the top left, this added this little triangle, this blue triangle. This means this is the starting page, the home page, and the interaction was to navigate to this page. So then I'm going to go here, I'm going to navigate it back, and then from this page, we can probably just hit delete for that one. So for every page, as you go to the prototype, you have this selection for different devices. So you can actually prototype this in a frame of a phone. So this is not going to work that great because it's really meant as a desktop. But if I were to hit the play here, this play icon, it's going to frame my website in a iPhone. So you'll see here that I can scroll across, I can do the navigation, and you'll notice that if I were to make this page really long and go back to the design, maybe throw some of my fun little objects here into here. And then now if I go to prototyping and I scroll down, you'll notice that the header here stays. Now I'm gonna, since I'm not designing this out for a phone, I would just go back to the prototype, and I'm gonna change this to, you have a variety of different settings here. You can do custom size, presentation. Presentation's gonna scale it. I'm just gonna choose none, and then I'm gonna hit play. Now you could choose the background if you wanted it white or gray or any other color. So if I hit the play button, now I can see my website. I have my header in the top, and if I scroll down, you'll notice my header is sticky at the top, and if I hit the next button, I go to my next page, and then I can click back. So this is great if you're really to showcase your progress on the design to a product team, development team, and really just sort of the click-throughs. Another nice feature is if you right-click and hit copy link, this is an area where you could share your prototype. You can go up in Chrome or any other browser, paste that URL in, and within here, you'll get access directly to the website, so you can share this link, and it's something that you can easily share with the team members. So I think that's majority of all of the different sections. And the last thing that I'd like to really just talk about is the pros and cons to Figma. So Figma is a sort of that one-stop shop for designing out your designs. So you can have rough wireframes, you could do collaboration. It is very high quality, so down to the detailed designs. You can do prototyping. And one thing that you also can do is the inspect tool. So from here, I can click, I can see dimensions, I can see specifications, colors, fonts. This is great for developers when they want to be able to identify, what is that font size, what is the color, all those things. So it's an easy handoff for development. The other thing is it's a all-in-one tool. And it's online. The font, you don't have to really worry about file size because it's all hosted, and you don't have to worry about accidentally deleting the file or being able to collaborate with your team members. So it has a feature where multiple people can be working on the same page at the same time, and it's instant. So you'll see people sort of navigating around in larger teams, and you don't have to worry about local files. So things around backup and restore, there is a way to see version history. So you'll be able to see the history of the page. And that would be right from up here, show version history. And like I said, over here, it is available in both Mac and PC because it is you can either do it via the web. So I can actually go to this project on within the browser, or I could use the native client within your desktop or PC. So within here, the other thing is that it's instant. So when I'm making these changes, other people in my team can instantly see that. There is a feature that's called autoflow where as you start designing out your pages, you can easily assign certain positions and padding, and the components on your page automatically just adjust as you move them. So it's a bit of a drag and drop experience, and it really allows for consistency in spacing and padding and positioning. And Figma can be also used as a very robust design system and pattern library. So you can create a lot of components and reusable elements that throughout your projects, and so that as team members build out certain things, there's sort of a single source of truth that you can use as a template. You can detach them and make them unique, but it's sort of this area where if you were to make one change to a component, it'll apply across all your other pages. The only negative thing I would say is that it does take a little bit of while for to get used to the collaboration features. So if you're not used to something like Miro or an area where you're working together as a team on the same file at the same time, it feels a little bit like Big Brother where they're looking over your shoulder. But there's so much, so that could be a con where you want to kind of work on your own without sort of feeling like somebody's looking over your shoulder. But I'd say there's a huge benefit, so that if somebody sees what you're doing, they could come in here and add in a comment and say, hey, really like what you're doing here. And then you post it. They could get quick feedback on that and alerts and emails directly on that. So there is a lot of the sort of the collaboration, the commenting, and being able to address certain things. So I think it may not be a con, but I think there's just there's just so much that this tool can do, and it's really starting to take over compared to all the other tools that rely on other plugins. So in general, this is the basics of Figma, and in future videos, I'll be focusing on some of those auto flows, and I appreciate your time.